So, after a brief 1¼ mile trip, I'm in Harwich, and the ferry is loaded with a dozen Dutch cyclists on an organised holiday trip, and she's off back to Felixstowe to collect more trippers.
Wave? No, they're not going to.
Time for a cuppa for me and a stroll around, starting with the quayside, which is open to the public. This area sees quite a lot of activity. There's a Trinity House base from which they look after all the nautical navigation aids around our coast, with its rather modern looking administration block. At the other end of the quay you'll find the lifeboat station. Today they have 2 lifeboats moored here, as well as the inshore boat, which is kept ashore in a specially constructed building. Close by, restored lightship LV-18, which was once a floating home for her crew, whose duty was to operate and maintain the ship's light and the fog siren when she was anchored in offshore waters.
The only time I ever did any work on
Ashore? Well, it's all quite smart, neat, and on a weekday before the summer holidays it's very quiet indeed. I lived here once for a while years ago, and the town seems very different from the slightly down at heel appearance it had. It all looks bright and clean in the summer sunshine. There's a lot of history in Harwich too. The high lighthouse here was partnered by the low light on the water side, and when the two were lined up you could sail your ship in safely. Today they'd lead you over the Landguard Spit, but you do get a great view from the low light's gantry, as it's now a museum. And when you chat to the museum keepers, you can hear some interesting tales.
Why don't we have an easier means of transit from Felixstowe to Harwich? Because Harwich is a nice place.
Yeah, it certainly is, but I'm biased.
Right.
It's been spoken about many, many times. Bridges, tunnels, and doing my research in the Suffolk Records Office, I came across a newspaper article dated April 1926. It mentions that the opening of the Harwich to Felixstowe tunnel would take place on the 1st of April in this particular year, and it appeared in a motoring magazine. And 300 cars turned up into Harwich, and completely overwhelmed the police constable who was here at the time. They'd never seen so many cars, and people were asking, where is the Harwich to Felixstowe tunnel? One of the motorists was scratching his head and said, well, perhaps the entrance is on the Felixstowe side. But no, that was silly, wasn't it, really? But they saw an old Harwich fisherman along the front, and they asked him, where is the Felixstowe tunnel? Well, he says, perhaps when you wait for the tide to go out, you might find it. It is later thought that this was a local prankster in Harwich who put it in the motoring magazine as an April Fool.
Fascinating stuff. On to my last stop, the Electric Palace, one of Britain's earliest cinemas. It still operates, although prices have gone up just a little since the last time they painted up the signs. Behind the cinema there's a small garden and memorial to remember the victims of the 1953 flood. Thankfully, Harwich had many fewer victims than Felixstowe, with just 8 people losing their lives. And that makes it time to go on to my next destination, after a bag of Harwich chips. The next bus leaving here goes to Manningtree, so that will do nicely. Even better, it's a double-decker, so if you can grab the front seat upstairs, you can have all the fun of trying not to flinch as tree branches smack into the bodywork. And before too long, we'll arrive where someone used to call Manningtree on the Mud.